Hello everybody, it's vanburman here. Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the GTX Titan, a card that I've featured on the channel before, but one that I haven't been able to use for a while because it has some unique quirks to it, which I'll very quickly just go over. I should have unplugged the power before I started. Never mind. There we go. So I do have a new test bench as well, which I won't show off in this video, but we will go through in another one. So here we are, GeForce GTX Titan. Nothing amazing really about the cooler, other than the fact that it says Titan on it, which is always nice. But one of the quirks is that when I bought it as broken, I've probably been through this before with you, but it turns out it only works in the secondary by 16 slot. I'm not sure why. Maybe there's something wrong with some of the connectors on the bottom and it won't run at proper speeds, as in the full bandwidth potentially. But yeah, I don't know what I've done to it recently, but I've been able to get like average GTX Titan results. It won't overclock much at all, and a bit foolish to do so when you've got something that you think is maybe not running exactly as it should be. It's also got some screws missing, all sorts of stuff. It's funny really. But if we have a look at the back, which is the main retention for the CPU core, I'm missing a screw out of there, and that's because it was sort of like lodged in. I ended up having to get out with some pliers, and I did unfortunately do a small amount of damage to the back of the card, but this seems to be resolved because I didn't break anything. It's no worse than it was before. And actually, trying to put a new screw in there, I was seeing, I don't know why, but I was seeing temperatures of well, just it maxing out, bouncing off 95 degrees effectively, and then throttling itself down. So yeah, it works better with no screw in, so only 3 screws in the back for the CPU core. So poor Titan. But no, the temperatures about it are fine, so it must get enough mounting pressure from those 3 screws, and then obviously the other screws around it keeping the shroud on. So yeah, just to bear that in mind before we go through the video a little bit, because there's a few quirks there. I don't think it's indicative of how a GTX Titan may run, as in I think someone else's may do better, and certainly anyone that's got like a better cooler on it than just the Founders Edition cooler, because these things, they're alright, but you know, they're blower style, they do the job that they need to do, they just look pretty cool and are pretty iconic at this point. But other than that, they're not all that great. So we've gone through, we're going to have a look at the sort of games released in 2021. How well does the GTX Titan do? I'll show you some pictures of the test bench, but I think that's probably a separate video because there's quite a bit to unpick. I have been trying to do bits as and when I can, although admittedly I haven't had a huge amount of time, or any time some days. So yeah, we'll go through that and see how it does. And you know, there's a lot more stuff to come up, some other stuff I want to have a take a gander at, but we'll see. So without further ado, let's get into the games.
We're going to start off by looking at Bright Infinite. Bright Memory Infinite. Oh gosh. Anyway, I knew I'd get it wrong. So yeah, this game has been released in 2021, although I believe the sort of early part of it was out last year, because I took a look at it. I don't know if I took a look at it for the channel, but I did take a look at it in any case. And you know, it's actually a really quite nice game. It's very fluid to play, with lots of really unique mechanics in it. Unique, as unique as it can be for a first-person shooter. It looks very like Crysis-like, if you get what I mean. I'm not sure what engine they are using here, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were using the CryEngine or something like that. It's probably now the Unreal Engine, but you know what I mean. So we run this at medium, 1080p, and you know, the frame rates are pretty good. It's not far off a 60 FPS average. It was quite smooth. I imagine if you could get a slightly increased overclock, it would be pretty good. There's not too much, or wasn't too much stutter. I think that was when it was loading from one area to the next in my bit of gameplay. So yeah, I've not really got any complaints about that. It runs really smoothly. Next up is, well, one of my favourite games this year is Biomutant, and this ran pretty well, to be fair. There was a bit of a huge difference in the indoor section and out in the overworld. So out in the overworld there was a bit more of a dip and a bit more variance. So I ran this at high. I think if I was going to play it through properly, I would probably run it on medium, just because there's a lot more overworld sections out there, generally getting between 30 and 40 FPS. And in the sort of more closed off areas, getting sort of 50, 60 FPS. You know, and you can see that by the mid 40s, 0.1 and then 21, just over 21 for the 0.1 results as well. My recording was in, as I say, in a closed off area, so the FPS was a bit better, but no, the Titan's more than capable of playing this, although, as I have shown before, you can play Biomutant with a GTX 480 as well. So, yeah, maybe don't take that as read, but no, yeah, we're still in a position where, even without up-to-date drivers, it still works pretty well. So I'm not going to share my feelings too much on Forza Horizon 5. I'm not really a big fan of the Forza Horizon series since about the third, or maybe the one before, or maybe the first one, I don't know. But yeah, it used to be quite good, now it just feels a bit contrived. So the game does flag up that I've not got the relevant drivers to run the game, and advises me not to run the game. But, you know, we did manage to run it pretty well. Had a couple of stutters here and there, though, that's the only problem, I think, sort of as it was loading in assets, so I'm not really sure where I had the issue there. I'm not certain that it's the graphics card. Maybe it's the external drive I was running it off of. I'm not really too certain, to be honest. So we managed to maintain above 30 FPS, which is, you know, fine. Not so much of a big deal, especially for a racing game. I think, you know, you can get away with playing as long as you've got the sort of over 30 FPS. Average, and then the 0.1 as well. Of course, those few stutters, it is worse in reality to what it looks like on here. But yeah, you could get away with it, that's for certain. Although, obviously, maxing out the Titan, I think it's funny really, because, you know, 6 gig of VRAM, you would, you know, nowadays would think that was probably sort of on the low end. But we don't really utilise that in a lot of these games, playing at 1080p, and I think that's really the sort of sticking point here, is that, you know, we're probably unlikely to ever use the level of VRAM that the Titan is capable of, purely because it can't run games at high enough fidelity to be able to utilise it. So the point becomes a bit moot, really. Mute, I was going to say. I'll mute myself right now. But yeah, not too bad. Like I say, I don't really enjoy the Forza game, so that's on me. Now, I'm not sure why, but I always expect this game to be a lot easier to run than it is. This is the Ascent, which is a brilliant game, I must say. I've been enjoying the time I have played with it. I would love to have more, because I really want to get into it. I'm sort of still in the first sort of, I don't know, the first part, you know, a couple of main missions in at this point. But yeah, running everything on high, we got a pretty good score, 46, with a few little stutters here and there, particularly big explosions and particle effects, where the particle effects are, I should say. I think that's really the main sticking point for the GTX Titan, is that it sort of really does have a bit of a struggle with it, especially during really sort of high intense scenes. But when you're doing the most of it, fighting a few enemies, not a big deal. Toss a grenade in, kill 3 or 4 people at the same time, and a barrel goes off. Yeah, then you're going to see a bit of a dip. It's just the way it is, really. But no, the game runs smoothly enough. I could certainly play the Ascent with the Titan, no problem. Luckily, it doesn't really require 60 FPS. Everything's smoother at 60 FPS, of course, but, you know, it's a pretty good average there. And as I say, other than the other than the big stutter that I had during my gameplay, it does run pretty well. You know, not much in terms of low FPS or anything like that. The frame times were fairly consistent as well, I would say, throughout, so that does help, you know, in terms of perceived smoothness. And finally, it would be remiss of me not to try Skyrim Anniversary Edition. So, yeah, with the best state that the vanilla game is right now, and just sort of as a precursor to this, obviously it is capped at 60 FPS due to engine limitations, so we did see times when we're not maxing out the GPU, but then we also saw some that drop below 60 as well. Once again, sort of like little stutters, and I must say I'm not like overly certain if that doesn't fall to the maybe my Titan not being as stable as it could be. So once again, take all of these with a pinch of salt. But you know, running on Ultra, it's fine. You know, runs as I would expect. I would be disappointed if the Titan couldn't run Skyrim Special Anniversary Edition, to be honest. And you know, even though obviously we've got a 0.1 and, well, basically a 0.1, 0.1 of 30, or pretty much 30, and then average of just under 60. If it was unlocked, obviously the average would be much higher than 60. So 60 is really your top limit. But yeah, frame times are really good, really smooth, as you would expect. Nothing really to say about this, I guess, other than, yeah, there were a few stutters here and there, but sort of very minor, and probably not things that I would notice or care about if I didn't have the stats up. I think that rings true for a lot of the sort of analysis that I do. I definitely sort of wouldn't notice some of it if the stats weren't up there for it. But yeah, Skyrim once again re-release. I'm going to class it as a re-release anyway. Just a funny one to put in there, just to end on. So there you have it, the GTX Titan in 2021. It works, which is a good thing. I'm not certain though that it's necessarily as impressive as I would have thought. I think there are certainly some limitations. I couldn't get the new Halo to run on it. There's some DX12 compatibility there. Obviously, the Titan now no longer gets any game-ready drivers, so it will become increasingly difficult to be able to get, you know, decent performance on the Titan, even though I think there is performance there, but it's not going to be optimized. And from what I've shown as well, especially this year, is that, you know, you can still do a fair amount with a GTX 480. Admittedly, you don't have to run everything on low with the Titan, and you've got a bit more options, but you know, for the money that you'll be paying for one of these, especially at the minute, it doesn't really seem worth it, even if your one is a bit more stable than the one I've got. But you know, overall, it's one of those really. It's will forever be an impressive and important card to myself. At one point, it was the absolute boss. It was the Titan, and there you go. That's it in 2021. Thanks for watching.